Welcome back to the deep dive. Today we're tackling something really tough. It's that moment one a lot of sponsors unfortunately face when you learn your sponsee has relapsed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The person you've walked with, shared so much with,
Yeah,
it's a shock.
it really is. It hits hard. You feel this deep, it's obviously maybe some heartache and often this feeling like you fail somehow.
Which is usually not the case, but it feels that way. And that's the big question we're digging into today, based on the materials we've looked at. My sponsee relapsed. What do I actually do now? It's a question you hear all the time.
Exactly. So we've gathered insights from, well, decades of collective experience, trying to get beyond just the basics and into the, let's say, the advanced practice of sponsorship in this specific crisis.
Right. Our mission here is to pull out the practical wisdom. We're focusing on three main things for the sponsor. First, how do you keep your own sobriety solid when everything feels chaotic?
Okay, vital. What's second?
Second, how do you interact with the sponsee? How do you help without enabling or trying to take over or making things worse?
And the third? That sounds like the hardest one.
It might be. It's about truly accepting the limits of what you can actually do. Understanding you don't have that kind of power over another person.
Okay, so this is about finding that balance, right?
Mm.
Compassion, but with structure, making sure the sponsor can still be helpful.
Exactly. It's about finding the strength and the clarity when you're really put to the test. These principles, they aren't just nice ideas when things are easy.
This is where they really count.
Yeah.
So let's dive in. We're looking for that unconditional love, but also, the necessary boundaries and detachment.
Mm.
Okay, so where do we start? The sources are pretty unanimous on this one, aren't they?
Absolutely. It starts with the sponsor. Inside. You have to protect your own recovery first. It's that classic analogy. Put your own oxygen mask on first.
Right. Because if you get pulled under by the sponsee's situation,
Then you're no help to anyone. Your sobriety, the texts remind us, is linked to the whole fellowship's strength, and that starts with you taking care of yourself. If you absorb all that pain and fear, you become part of the problem, not the solution. Your own spiritual condition tanks.
and it's easy to get sucked in.
Yeah.
So what are the warning signs? What kind of emotional baggage should a sponsor be looking out for in themselves?
Well, self-pity is a big one. Feeling sorry for yourself because your sponsee relapsed. But also, and this is maybe more subtle, checking that desire to control the outcome. Are you guiding or are you trying to manage?
Ah, that's a key difference. Guidance versus management. What do the sources say about the danger there?
They're pretty blunt. If a sponsor starts making demands, not for the sponsee's well-being, but for their own sense of security, like you need to do this so I feel okay. Or if they try to dominate the sponsee's choices.
Yeah.
They're setting themselves up for a fall. Because when the sponsee pushes back, or worse, relapses again, the sponsor feels personally attacked, wounded.
And they think it's the sponsee's fault or their own fault for not trying hard enough.
Exactly. When really the pain comes from trying to control something that was never theirs to control in the first place.
Okay, so distinguishing healthy care from, well, unhealthy control. This leads right into that phrase we hear a lot, detachment with compassion. What does that actually look like in this situation?
It's about separating the person you care about from their illness and their choices. You can still love them deeply, you can want the best for them, but you don't own their actions. You don't take it personally.
So practically speaking.
Practically, it might mean listening empathetically when they call you in despair, but refusing to lie to their boss for them, or saying no to giving them money you know will go straight to the addiction.
But at the same time.
At the same time, you're saying, I'll meet you for coffee anytime. Let's talk about getting back on track. Let's talk about the steps. You maintain the loving relationship, but you hold the line on principles. You let go of the illusion that you can make them change. You just offer the path.
That requires a pretty fundamental shift in perspective, doesn't it?
Yeah.
The sources talk about needing to put on a new pair of glasses.
Yeah, I like that metaphor. Because when you're caught up in the relapse drama, it's easy to slip back into old ways of thinking. Fear, blame, control. Those old glasses.
Right.
Putting on the new pair, the spiritual perspective, helps you see the bigger picture. That even in the middle of this mess, there's still hope, there's still serenity possible for you, and there's purpose in just carrying the message. You see things through principles, not fear.
And what makes those new glasses actually work? What's the key ingredient?
Humility. Plain and simple.
But not humility like being a doormat.
No, not at all. True humility here means accepting reality. Accepting yourself, limitations and all, and seeing the situation for what it truly is. For the sponsor, it's that crucial admission, I am not God.
Yeah.
I cannot control another person's choices or their illness. Accepting that limitation isn't weakness. It actually gives you strength because it lifts that impossible burden of trying to be all-powerful.
Which brings us right to the heart of the sponsor's potential pain, right? The self-centeredness. It might feel like sadness for the sponsee, but often the hurt that lingers is about, well, about the sponsor.
That's the tough truth the literature points to.
Yeah.
Self-centeredness is the root. The texts have this really direct axiom. If you're sore because someone else's actions, the relapse, hurt you, meaning your ego, your sense of success, your emotional comfort,
They are.
then you are in the wrong also. That anger, that soreness, it isn't righteous indignation for the sponsee. It's about you. It's self-centered.
Ouch. Okay, so the solution isn't trying harder to fix the sponsee because we just said that's impossible.
Right. The solution has to be internal. You have to turn that energy inward.
How?
You ask for help, spiritual help, to remove your anger, your hurt pride, your self-pity. The focus shifts entirely to fixing me instead of trying to fix them. This is pure step 10 work for the sponsor.
They're applying your own program.
Exactly. Remembering your primary job is self-care, nourishing your own mind, body, spirit, building that internal resilience so when this kind of thing happens, you don't automatically take it personally or start blaming. That's the difference between weathering the storm and getting sunk by it.
Okay, so the sponsor's done that internal work, or at least started it. They've stabilized. Now they need to figure out how to engage externally, but with those boundaries really clear.
Yeah, and that means getting crystal clear on what the sponsor's job actually is and what it isn't.
Which is?
The job is to carry the message, not the person. You're a guide, a sounding board, someone who reflects the principles. You offer advice, encouragement, sure. You hold them accountable to their goals.
But you're not their savior.
Definitely not.
Yeah.
And the whole fellowship works on attraction, right? Not promotion. Your life, lived according to principles, is the attraction. You don't chase them down and force the message on them.
It reminds me of that simple formula from the early days.
Spiritual principles plus work with others. That's it.
And that work, especially in this situation, demands rigorous honesty, which can feel really tricky when someone's actively using.
It's maybe the most crucial tool. The sponsor has to be tough on themselves, constant self-inventory, like we just discussed, but always considerate and truthful with the sponsee.
Even if they're drunk or high.
Especially then, sometimes. The sources say you level with them honestly because they often remember dishonesty later, even if they seemed out of it at the time. Deception undermines everything.
Okay, now this leads to that example in the sources that always throws people. The one about making a promise, even a bad one, like telling someone you'll let them have a drink when you get them home safely.
Yeah.
And the text says you have to honor that promise. That sounds completely backwards.
I know, it sounds crazy, right? Like enabling. But think about the deeper principle.
Okay.
The person relapsing is often living in a world of manipulation and broken promises. If you, the sponsor, the person representing recovery and honesty, resort to a lie, even a well-intentioned one, like tricking them to get them home, what message does that send?
That even the good guys lie when it's convenient.
Exactly. It confirms their cynical worldview. The immediate goal of stopping that one drink is less important than the long-term goal of demonstrating unwavering integrity. You can't teach honesty through deception. Honoring that ill-advised promise maintains your credibility. It's about building or rebuilding trust on the foundation of absolute honesty.
Wow, okay. That reframes it completely. Integrity first, always. Beyond that kind of radical honesty, the sources also talk about needing to maybe soften them up, shifting away from just spiritual talk.
Yeah, sometimes when someone's deep in relapse, spiritual ideas just bounce off. They seem abstract, maybe even weak compared to the power of the addiction.
So what do you do?
You might need to start with the hard medical facts, as the text puts it. Really lay out the grim reality, the physical consequences, the social damage, the dead end they're heading towards. Paint a realistic picture.
The goal isn't to preach, but
To soften them up at depth, to break through the denial by showing them the sheer hopelessness of their current path from a purely logical physical standpoint. Get them scared enough, make them see it's unwinnable on their own terms.
and then they might be willing to listen to other solutions.
Then they might be willing to do anything, including considering spiritual principles they dismissed before. It creates the willingness.
Sounds like the difference between just being dry and actually being sober.
That's a critical distinction, and the sponsor needs to understand it. Dry is just not drinking, white-knuckling it. Often resentful, isolated, not really changing inside. The sources are clear, that's not real recovery, and it's usually not sustainable.
Whereas sober.
Sober involves action. Working the steps as a way of life. That's where the promise comes in, not just grim survival, but being happy, joyous, and free. Contentment.
So after a relapse, the sponsor's job is still to encourage that action, like pushing towards step 3, the surrender.
Gently, yes. Encouraging them to make that determined and persistent trial the steps require. But again, the sponsee has to be the one to actually do it, to exert their own will, to surrender their will. The sponsor can't do it for them.
And this circles back to that danger zone for the sponsor trying to control things.
Exactly, avoiding that domination and overdependence. If the sponsor lets the sponsee lean on them for everything, or if the sponsor tries to manage every detail of the sponsee's life.
It might feel good temporarily,
Yeah.
like being needed.
Sure, but it's a trap. Because when the sponsee pushes back or relapses or just drifts away, which often happens, the sponsor feels devastated, hurt, abandoned.
And again, they blame the sponsee.
Right. When the real issue was the sponsor's own need to control, their own lack of detachment. They failed to manage their own side of the street.
When a sponsor sees a relapse, it's so easy to just view it as a moral failing or a lack of willpower or a spiritual deficit.
It is. But the sources push us to look deeper, to understand the context, both biologically and spiritually. It helps maintain compassion and that necessary detachment.
Okay, let's start with the biology. How does that help?
Well, understanding addiction isn't just bad choices helps remove judgment. The texts frame it almost like a learning disorder. It's tied to how our brains learn and adapt.
How so?
Repeated use of a substance creates really strong neural pathways. The brain learns that this substance brings pleasure or relief from pain, and it starts treating it like it's essential for survival.
And those pathways don't just vanish when someone stops using for a while.
Not at all. They're deeply ingrained. That's where dopamine comes in. It's not just about pleasure, it's the learning molecule. It hardwires the craving. The brain remembers.
So the brain is basically chemically altered.
In a sense, yes, it's learned that the substance is vital. This conditioning is why moderation is often, well, virtually impossible when someone's crossed that line. One drink can reactivate that whole learned cascade.
Understanding that it's partly physiological, it helps the sponsor see it's not just the sponsee being stubborn or weak.
Exactly. It's not a simple moral choice at that point. It's a powerful, learned biological drive hijacking their system.
This perspective seems to align with what some sources call neurodiversity.
Yeah, it fits. If we see addiction partly as a result of how someone's brain is wired or conditioned something they didn't consciously design, it changes how we approach it.
Oh.
We move away from blame. You wouldn't blame someone for needing a ramp for a wheelchair, right? You accommodate. Similarly, understanding the neurological aspect helps us accommodate, helps us avoid marginalizing people, helps us move past those damaging stereotypes of addicts just having bad character. It fosters curiosity and openness, which are essential for recovery.
Okay, so there's the biological piece.
Yeah.
But then there's a spiritual angle, which sounds almost paradoxical, the idea that relapse or the suffering around it can actually serve a purpose.
It's a tough concept, but yeah, sometimes that calamity and collapse, as the texts call it, is exactly what's needed.
How could that be?
Because profound spiritual transformations often rise from hitting absolute rock bottom, the pain, the hopelessness. It finally shatters the illusion that they can manage on their own power. It burns away the ego, the self-sufficiency that wasn't working anyway.
There's a philosophical view mentioned, something about suffering.
Right. That the sole and supreme use of suffering is to purify, to burn out all that is useless and impure. The relapse can be that fire, burning away the last resistance to asking for help, to surrendering.
There's that striking story used to illustrate this.
Yeah.
The person on the cliff.
Oh, yeah, the man clinging to the precipice, hanging onto that branch for dear life, terrified of the huge fall he imagines below. He exhausts himself trying to hold on through sheer willpower. And then, finally, utterly defeated, he lets go, only to find he was just 6 inches from the ground the whole time. The point being, release doesn't come from trying harder. It comes from abandoning that desperate personal effort and relying on something else, a higher power. The relapse can be that moment of realizing personal effort is futile, forcing that spiritual surrender, giving up the fight they can't win.
So after this potential collapse, whether it's biological or spiritual or both, the sponsor's role shifts again, back to compassion, making sure the door's open.
Wide open, without judgment. That's where the fellowship itself is so powerful, offering immediate acceptance, breaking that terrible isolation the person feels.
And the sponsor's role within that,
If the sponsee is willing, the sponsor helps them navigate the shame, the self-blame, helps them practice self-acceptance, self-forgiveness, learning to treat themselves with more loving kindness, as one source puts it.
Which allows them to face their past.
Exactly. It opens the door to that promise. We will not regret the past nor wish to shut the door on it. You help them feel safe enough to actually feel their feelings, to see themselves as still worthy of love despite the relapse. That sense of belonging is crucial. Nobody should be shut out.
Okay, so while the sponsee might be going through chaos, the sponsor needs to maintain their own discipline. This crisis really forces the sponsor back to basics, doesn't it? Back to their own daily program.
Absolutely, especially step 10. It's always important, but in a situation like this, it becomes a lifeline.
Continue to take personal inventory.
And continue to set right any new mistakes as we go along. That means constantly checking in. How am I feeling about this relapse? Am I resentful? Am I feeling superior? Am I gossiping? Am I scared for my own sobriety?
It's ongoing self-correction.
Constantly, to make sure the sponsor stays spiritually fit to be of service and doesn't get pulled off course by their own reactions.
What are the main pitfalls sponsors need to look for in themselves here? The texts highlight a few specific things.
Yeah, the big four: selfishness, dishonesty, resentment, and fear.
How might they show up in this context?
Selfishness could be wanting the sponsee to perform well to make me look good. Dishonesty might be downplaying the relapse to others or even to myself. Resentment is that feeling of they're wasting my time, or anger at them for relapsing. And fear, well, fear that their struggle somehow infects or threatens my own recovery.
And when those pop up?
Gotta deal with them. Immediately admit them, discuss them, pray about them, examine every thought and action around the situation to make sure it's coming from a place of principle, not ego.
So, constant inventory. And then there's the other daily practice. Conscious contact, step 11.
Right, that's the source of the sponsor's peace and stability through the storm. Prayer and meditation. The texts say, this is how we get new vision, action, and grace to deal with our own darker impulses, like the impulse to judge or control. It keeps us growing.
And the focus of the prayer is important here, isn't it?
Crucial. You're not praying for the sponsee to get sober as much as you want that. You can't use prayer to manipulate outcomes for someone else.
So what do you pray for?
You pray only for knowledge of His will for us and the power to carry that out, meaning, show me my role here. Give me the strength and wisdom to do what I need to do, aligned with spiritual principles. It keeps the focus on your own actions and attitudes.
So the spiritual life isn't just a comfort. It actually makes the crisis useful.
It transforms it. It allows the sponsor to turn this pain and calamity into something useful for their own growth. It becomes a real-world test of their own program. That connection gives them the guidance and stability needed to stay helpful, to reflect principles instead of just reacting with frustration.
Which leads us to the final piece, step 12. Practicing these principles in all our affairs.
This is where it all comes together. It means the sponsor's entire life, especially how they handle this difficult situation, becomes a demonstration of the program. Their calmness, their lack of judgment, their boundaries, their continued willingness to help when the sponsee is ready. It all shows unselfishness, honesty, compassion, love, living these principles, even and especially when things are tough. The commitment is to stay connected, awake, and of service.
Letting go of that old idea that life's just about seeking pleasure or avoiding pain.
Exactly. By walking the walk during this crisis, the sponsor becomes the message. That consistency, that principled living, is the most powerful form of attraction they can offer. It's what the sponsee might eventually see and return to. #outro. So if we boil it all down, what's the core guidance for a sponsor in this situation? I think it's this. Your job isn't to fix them. It's to reflect the light of the principles. Carry the message, not the person.
Which means accepting your limits.
Accepting the limits of your personal power, yeah. And doubling down on your own spiritual condition, daily inventory, prayer, meditation, keeping that door open with unconditional love, but based on attraction, not force.
And ultimately,
the sponsee has to make their own decision to surrender, to do the work. You can't make it for them, no matter how much you care or how long it takes.
it really forces a shift, doesn't it?
Yeah.
This painful experience for the sponsee becomes a deep lesson for the sponsor, too, about letting go.
Definitely. Letting go of controlling other people, outcomes, the past things you can't control anyway, and focusing instead on what you can control.
Which is?
Your own spiritual state, your connection, your response, how you react to disappointment with compassion and principle. And that response needs that quiet confidence that comes from experience, right? The sponsor knows they've done their part by sticking to the principles. The real question isn't, did I fail them? It's, can I maintain my own integrity, my own spiritual grounding?
Offering that kind of tough love.
Yeah, maybe love with boundaries, but a love that still clearly says underneath it all, look, I know this hurts, I know the way out, and whenever you're truly ready to try again, I'm here to help. That lived consistency.
That's carrying the message. Thank you.
Yeah.
That gives us a lot to think about.
My pleasure. It's a vital topic.
Thanks for taking this deep dive with us today.